Hello and welcome to a Monday edition of To The Point podcast. Hope you guys all had a great weekend. I know I did, watching the World Juniors on Saturday all day, and then it pivoted into the NFL action yesterday where pretty much every game had some sort of implication on playoffs. Could have been the last game for certain players with their teams, coaches firing. So a lot happened yesterday on week 17. I expect a lot to happen today. It's known as Black Monday in the NFL, where coaches are getting the pink slip. They are sent packing, and then the team moves forward with a different head coach and a new philosophy. Just off the top, before I talk about the games, the New York Jets did what we all knew they were going to do. They fired Adam Gase after 2 seasons. He was 9-23 as head coach. Obviously, he went 2-14 this season, and really, you could say he screwed it up because if he went winless, the Jets would have had the first pick in the draft. They will have the second pick, which is really intriguing to me for a number of reasons. They have Sam Darnold at quarterback. He's been there 3 years. They can pick up his fifth-year option, which is basically you pick up money, makes about a little over $20 million. So it's not a huge chunk of change when it comes to NFL quarterbacks. So they have that decision coming up, GM Joe Douglas. They also have to hire a new head coach. Like I just mentioned, Adam Gase is fired. But I think first things first, they need to get a head coach that they trust, because you need to include your head coach when it comes to quarterback. I mean, it's the most important position on the team. So before deciding, okay, we want to cut bait with Sam Darnold, we got the second pick, we're going to take Zach Wilson out of BYU or Justin Fields from the Ohio State. You need your head coach to be in line with your thinking. And I don't think the Jets have done this. They've made decisions when they hired Gase. They made decisions before he got there. And I'm not defending him. He's a terrible head coach. He's had limited success when he was with Peyton Manning. And, well, who hasn't had success with Peyton Manning when you're coaching them? So he goes to Miami. Ryan Tannehill looks like a flat-out disaster. He goes to Tennessee, and he's a franchise quarterback. You can say that Derrick Henry's a beast, and he is, and I'll talk about him in this podcast. But Ryan Tannehill is a functional starting quarterback, and he's above average. He's made the playoffs past 2 years. He's done, you talk about the bigger names in the NFL. I mentioned Matt Stafford, and I hate piling on him, but he's a name. He went first overall in the draft. He's made the playoffs a few times, never won a playoff game. Ryan Tannehill won 2 playoff games last year, beating Baltimore and New England, and then almost defeating Kansas City. So it's just the Jets have to be in line. They have to be in tow and make decisions as a group. It can't just be one person. It can't be it. And furthermore, it can't be the owner making decisions, because that's never good. Because the owner buys a team, and yes, he may know football. I'm not saying he's an idiot. But maybe he's an idiot savant, because you need football people to make football decisions. And too often, owners put their nose in shit, and it goes bad. For instance, in Washington, Daniel Snyder wanted Dwayne Haskins. It was reported that scouts were like, we don't know. Like, Daniel, this is not a good idea. He's not our guy. He's not our franchise quarterback. But he was from Washington, from Maryland, the area. So he's like, no, I want to draft the hometown kid. Well, less than 2 years later, the guy's on the street, and he's not wearing a Washington football team jersey. So go figure. But, it's just decisions like these. But Darnold, I think they'll probably move on, but I don't know if I would. I have seen, obviously, Justin Fields played fantastic in the college football semifinal against Clemson, torched them for 6 touchdowns, throwing for over 400 yards. But that was his first really good game all year against tough competition, which I give him credit for. But he needs to throw a couple of these games in there. And the game against Alabama, I think, will be critical as well, just to how scouts view him, and if the Jets would be willing to move on from Darnold and to take him second overall in the draft. But I expect a lot more firings to happen today. Jacksonville's head coach, Doug Marrone, likely to be fired. It's rumored that he'll be replaced by former Ohio State head coach Urban Meyer, who's currently working as an analyst for Fox Sports. Interesting hire. He's always been a great college coach, never really had success in the NFL, kind of like Nick Saban. I don't know if it's going to work. He's going to be drafting a college kid in Trevor Lawrence. So that could translate just having a college player, but a green coming into the NFL. But interesting hire. I'm glad. I'll be glad to see Urban on the sidelines again. I like him at Fox, but I think he's a good head coach, and if he wants to coach, good for him. Another, a couple more spots. Houston, they got Romeo Crennel. They already fired Bill O'Brien. They should move on from Romeo Crennel. He's 73. He's the oldest coach in the NFL. He's never had success as a head coach. Always been a great defensive coordinator, but they need to move on. So I expect that they will try to make a push to hire Eric Bieniemy. Detroit already fired Matt Patricia, so they'll be looking for a new head coach. An interesting one out there is Minnesota. They have had Mike Zimmer for 7 seasons now, and he's had success there, but they missed the playoffs this year. They're kind of in a state of flux. Their defense, which is his specialty, was the worst he's ever had as a head coach. So I don't know if they will pull the trigger there, but I think it's definitely a possibility and something to look out for. The Eagles, Chris Mortensen of ESPN reported yesterday that the Eagles are going to keep Doug Peterson for next season. I'll touch on him more when I talk about the Washington Eagles game last night on Sunday Night Football. But a little surprising to me. He's been a disaster this year when it comes to play calling. Not really helping. Obviously, they've been ravaged by injuries, but still, he really didn't put Carson Wentz in a position to succeed a lot. And I think his play calling was really below average, and his decision making as a coach you can really question. So, a couple of names. There's definitely more that I'm missing right now, but just a few teams to keep an eye on throughout the day in the coming days to see what happens here. But to talk about what happened yesterday, obviously an important day. A lot of teams, it was win and you're in. And in the AFC, I'll start there. The biggest game for me was Dolphins at Bills. Dolphins come in knowing if they win the game that they're in. They're in the playoffs. However, they're playing the Bills, 12-3. The Bills still have something to play for. With a win, they clinch the numbers 2 seed. That guarantees them 2 home playoff games if they were to win them. So important for the Bills. Josh Allen starting, Stephon Diggs, every normal starter was pretty much in there for the Buffalo Bills. And the Dolphins, they know they win, they're in. They could get some help, but Cleveland was playing Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's underman with sitting Big Ben, having Mason Rudolph under center. So not likely that Cleveland would lose. You got Baltimore playing Cincinnati. I don't need to really explain that one. Indianapolis playing Jacksonville, the worst team in the NFL. So I'm listing the teams that they need to lose if they weren't to win, and it just didn't look good. So the day actually started out decent for Miami. They started getting pressure on Josh Allen. He was really erratic. He threw a bad interception picked off by Byron Jones, and Miami turned that into a 49-yard field goal, 3-0. But after this big stop, the Miami offense never got on track the whole day. We saw it. Tua played against Vegas a week ago Saturday, and he couldn't do it. And they had to turn to Ryan Fitzpatrick, and he was the heroic man to come in and get the win. He had tested positive for COVID-19, so he was unavailable. So it was on the rookie to deliver in this big must-win game for the Dolphins, and he just isn't ready for it. He gets sacked 5 times in this game, just holding on to the ball too long, not picking up blitzes. The Miami defense continues to play well. They put pressure, but the levee broke about midway through the second quarter, where Josh Allen, a great punt from Borquez, the Buffalo pinned Miami back at their 1. Got a punt, great field position. They go on a drive, and which leads to a 7-yard touchdown reception by Isaiah McKenzie. Then Dolphins 3-and-out. They didn't generate anything, and it leads to another touchdown for Isaiah McKenzie. 14-3. And it's just it's a string of just pattern of Tua's just not confident. The running game wasn't going well, and their defense started to become Swiss cheese because another 3-and-out right before the half, and Isaiah McKenzie, who had 2 receiving touchdowns already, took back a punt return 81 yards for a score. And that it killed Miami. 21-6 at the half, and they never really rebounded. Josh Allen didn't play the rest of the game. He only played a half. Matt Barkley came in and played the rest of the game, but in the second half, Tua Tagovailoa was intercepted 3 times. One was taken back by Josh Norman for a pick 6, and it was just a bad day for the Miami Dolphins and co. They couldn't get on track, and it's tough because I'm going to mention the other games, but just to spoil it now, they missed the playoffs. The other teams that they needed to lose, if they lost, didn't. They won. They handled their business. And, Miami finishes 10-6, and that's not a bad season. The Washington football team won the NFC East at 7-9. So just to juxtapose that. But it's tough pill to swallow being that close to making the playoffs. And, they have some decisions to make. I'm not going to write off Tua right away. Me and Adam kind of had a little debate about this last week where he's like, Tua's not the man. Well, 1 year does not define a career. Carson Wentz had one really great season, and since then hasn't been the same player. I look at Troy Aikman. I'm going to mention Hall of Famers, and I realize that. But Troy Aikman, Peyton Manning, they were terrible in their first year in the NFL. If a team said, okay, well, these guys are no good, I'm moving on, how would their careers have gone? Teams have to have patience, and I don't think teams do it enough anymore. They give up on players before they realize their full potential. And I think Miami is a team that has done that, with the likes of Ryan Tannehill, trading Jarvis Landry, the Browns, who's had great success there. They need to hold on to these prized possessions because they drafted Tua 5th. You need to give him more than half a season of a look. And they need to move on from Ryan Fitzpatrick. To figure out if Tua's your guy, you need to remove Fitzpatrick because he's always going to be looking, over his shoulder at Fitzpatrick. Maybe Ryan will retire. He's talked about that. I think he's played well this year. I think he can get a job easily with some of the backup quarterbacks that are just terrible in the NFL right now. So, and also for the Dolphins, they have the 3rd overall pick in the draft. And it's not because they finished 10-6. They're going to have another pick in the mid-teens. They traded former first-round pick Laramie Tunsil to the Houston Texans. Now, this was 2 years ago. This was 2 years ago during the rebuild. And they traded Tunsil to Houston. They got a lot of picks from Houston in that trade. They also traded Kenny Stills there. So they have a lot of draft picks built up. But Houston this year was such a disaster that they finished with the 3rd worst record. So Miami has their first-round pick this year, and it is the 3rd overall pick in the draft. Now, normally you could say, well, they could take another quarterback, which they could. They could take a quarterback. I don't recommend it. I don't think it's the right move for the franchise long-term to draft a quarterback right now. But I'd draft Patrick Surtain III from Alabama, the corner. They got 2 good corners right now, but I think he's such a good player that you can't really miss on him. And the way he looked against Notre Dame, he's just a phenomenal player. But so the Dolphins, they got some key things to figure out here. A tough season, but still success after having 5 wins the year before to add 5 more onto your resume. Applause to the Miami Dolphins on a good season. And with the Bills, they win, so they clinch the 2nd seed in the AFC. Kansas City is the top seed. They'll get a bye next week in the Super Wildcard weekend. But Bills, if they win their games and play Kansas City, they'll have 2 playoff games. And Buffalo recently announced that they're going to allow the Bills to have fans, limited capacity, I think close to 7,500 fans, something along those lines. So Bills Mafia, the little bit that they can have in there, will be able to celebrate Saturday when they play their first playoff game at home in over 20 years. So good things are happening in Buffalo. They're the biggest threat to Kansas City in my eyes, and it's not even close. So they're a team to watch. They're a lot of fun. Sony with Stephon Diggs, a phenomenal season for him. John Brown getting healthy, Cole Beasley. They're a team to watch and a real threat. Moving on in the AFC, I'll talk. I won't touch much on the Baltimore Ravens. They beat Cincinnati 38-3. They just mauled them. It was Lamar ran for over 100 yards. The team ran for 403 yards as a team for the game. Lamar only threw 11 passes, but they've won 6 straight. I got to give them credit. They've had a weak schedule down the stretch, but you can only beat who's on your schedule. So they've beaten the Cincinnati, the Giants. They had that great game against Cleveland on Monday Night Football. So they've handled their business here. They come into the playoffs, and as the 5th seed in the AFC, and they look like a dominant team ready to take the next step here. And impressive win by them. We also saw the Cleveland Browns beat Pittsburgh. I mentioned Big Ben did not play. Cleveland clinches a playoff berth for the first time since 2002. Just a really euphoric moment for that franchise. Baker Mayfield picks up third down and 1. He keeps the ball, runs, gets 2 yards, seals the win. And you could feel it. He was so fired up after the game. The team really excited. Kevin Stefanski, first-year head coach, gets this franchise to the playoffs and probably seals him coach of the year, maybe. I think it's hard not to give it to him just with the way that franchise has been ran for so long, just with ineptitude. I wouldn't be mad if he won it. He's worked his ass off, and he's got a good team there. But with the win, the Browns clinch, Steelers lost, so they're the 3 seed, and that's actually going to be a playoff matchup. So it'll be Browns at Steelers. This week it was Steelers at Browns. So next week, Big Ben will be back in, but a rematch will be the 3rd matchup of the season between these two teams. The first one was just a mauling by the Steelers, 38-6. But that was before they hit the skids. Big Ben's only had really one good game in the second half of the season, beating Indianapolis 2 weeks ago. So 3rd matchup, division game. I'm not going to complain about that in the playoffs. I think it should be good. I'll talk about the games later in the week with my predictions and things like that. But good news for Cleveland making the playoffs. Good on them. And obviously they got Pittsburgh in front of them. So teams playing each other back-to-back weeks. I think that'll be a physical game with some chippiness, obviously with the 2 division foes going head-to-head. So that Baltimore 5th seed, 6th seed goes to the Cleveland Browns. And then the 7th seed was locked up by the Indianapolis Colts. They beat the Jaguars 28-14. Jonathan Taylor had a huge day, ran for 251 yards, the rookie out of Wisconsin. He's really becoming a beast for the Colts. And he kind of had a tough start to the year, not gaining a lot of yards, some fumble issues. The back half of the season, he's been phenomenal. And 253 yards on the ground. I mean, that's just so impressive. And Colts beat the Jaguars 28-14. Phillip Rivers signed a 1-year deal with Indianapolis. I think this weekend, if they lose to the Bills, it'll be his last game. He signed a 1-year deal. It's also reported that his son's starting high school football and he wants to coach him. So we could see Phillip Rivers on an NFL field for the last time this coming weekend. So, but good on the Colts. They took a chance with Phillip Rivers. He left the Chargers organization after so many years, and they've gotten to the playoffs. So the Colts make it as well. So just to run through the AFC playoff games, we got Indianapolis at Buffalo, Cleveland at Pittsburgh, and then Baltimore at Tennessee. Tennessee clinched the AFC South and the 4 seed in a crazy game with the Houston Texans. Deshaun Watson, who was hobbled all day but just had an unbelievable performance. He's had a great season behind a really bad team in front of him. But great Derrick Henry ran for 250 yards and became the 8th player in NFL history to rush for over 2,000 yards in a season. He's just a freight train, and they're going to play Baltimore, who they played last year in the AFC divisional playoff game. So last year it was in Baltimore. This year it'll be in Tennessee. But it'll be interesting to see if Baltimore can make any adjustments. The key for Baltimore in that game is to not fall behind early, because then they can't run the ball. They need to be able to run the ball the entire game, and they'll have a chance to win the whole game. Also, Tennessee's defense is not what it was last year. It's really struggling. Tennessee Titans are a playoff team, but they have the least amount of sacks in the history of the NFL coming from a playoff team. So they don't get pressure on the quarterback, and Lamar can just break outside anytime he wants and scramble for 20 yards. So it's going to be interesting to see what Mike Vrabel can do to make life tough for Lamar Jackson this coming weekend. But Tennessee wins on a doink field goal. It goes right upright and bounces in. They can get the Cody Parkey bounce like the Bears got a couple of years ago. But so that's the AFC. Those are the teams in. Kansas City obviously will be idle. They'll be chilling, putting their feet up while watching to see who they'll be playing a week from Saturday. Now going to the NFC. I'll start with the NFC East just because it was so interesting yesterday. First game, Dallas at the Giants. And it's the winner of that game would make the playoffs if the Washington football team lost. So winner of Giants-Cowboys make the playoffs if Washington loses. And it started off as a disaster of a day for the Dallas Cowboys. Andy Dalton was 3 for his first 8 passes for 18 yards. They weren't generating anything. However, the only thing keeping the Cowboys in the game was just the Giants. 2 fumbles. A fumble by Wayne Gallman recovered by Dallas, which was turned into a touchdown. And then Daniel Jones got intercepted, and that got turned into 10 points. That turned into 3 points. So 10 points off turnovers for the day for the Cowboys. But something the Giants did all day very well was get pressure on the quarterback. Leonard Williams had 2.5 sacks. Kyler Fackrell brought down Andy Dalton, and he was getting banged up. Leonard Williams accidentally stepped on his hand, and he was favoring it, his left hand, his non-throwing hand, the whole day. For the Giants, Sterling Shepard stepped up. He had a rush and receiving touchdown in the first half, and it was 13-6 Giants at the half. And they had really all the momentum, but then it shifted. Cowboys defense started getting to Daniel Jones, and they couldn't do anything. Cowboys got the ball to start the second half. They got a 57-yard field goal, which cut the lead to 20-9. I mentioned Jones got intercepted 20-16. So then Andy Dalton started to find his rhythm. He's firing passes to people. They go on a 13-play, 6-minute drive. Giants get a stop, make it 20-19. Now, this is where the game really shifted. Mike McCarthy's been criticized all year for poor coaching, and today it was 100% valid. The Giants are on a drive. They're on 3rd down, and Daniel Jones airs one out to Dante Pettis. He reaches out, and it looks like he made the catch at first glance. Now, he didn't. The ball moved under him, but they stopped him on 4th down, but they were in field goal range. So the Giants rushed to get to the line, and Mike McCarthy did not challenge the call. So Graham Gano kicks in a 50-yard field goal. He's money. He's only missed 1 field goal all year. But here's the big thing. I hate video replay. I think refs should make the right call. However, There's video replay in the game. I'm not immune to it. So if you have it, use it. He didn't use it. So 23-19. This would have shifted the game, because if that catches, if they would have challenged it, they would have changed it to incomplete pass, and the Giants would have had to punt the ball. With the yards that he gained, he got into field goal range. If it's incomplete, they punt. The Cowboys got the ball with 3.5 minutes left, and they drove down the field. And they were inside the Giants 20, and Greg Zuerlein was 4 for 4 for the day. He was not missing a field goal. But the drive completely shifts because you have to score a touchdown. You're down 4. And if it's 20-19, you can run the ball. You can do what they did on the drive, but kick a field goal and have a walk-off field goal and win the game. Yet they couldn't do that because of Mike McCarthy. He didn't challenge the play, and it cost his team because they go on a long drive. They get down to the red zone again like they have all day, but the Giants get pressure on Dalton. He throws a red zone interception, and that was really ball game. On the second to last play, Wayne Gallman looked like he had fumbled, but he recovered in the pile, so that was a sigh of relief for the Giants. This is just another failed opportunity by the Dallas Cowboys. And the night game really didn't matter. Washington won, so it didn't matter that much in the long run. But it does matter in the grand scheme of what the hell are you doing coaching? Like, what are your spotters doing? You need to look at your organization and say, we can do better than this. And they failed so openly there that they didn't do the common thing. They didn't do the right thing. And it's just a really poor coaching, just poor management by Mike McCarthy and the Dallas Cowboys organization. So the Giants win 23-19. Now, they're in, and they know this, if the Washington football team loses. So Sunday Night Football, Alex Smith's returning for Washington, coming off a calf injury. Obviously, the 17 surgeries and everything that's gone on with it. He starts off well, gets a touchdown on the opening drive, then a field goal after an interception. But before the half, Jalen Hurts found some success going on long drives. He had 2 rushing touchdowns in the first half. And then the football team scored a late touchdown to Logan Thomas to end the first half. So 17-14. In the second half, it was weird. The Eagles almost looked like they wanted to screw the Giants because they took Jalen Hurts out of the game after his first possession. I don't think he was hurt because he was running around on the sideline. He didn't look particularly pleased. They put Nate Sudfeld in because Carson Wentz didn't even dress. And it was really strange. The football team, neither team had a great game. The football team won 20-14, which got them the division title. But it was strange from the Eagles why Jalen Hurts, though Nate Sudfeld's not the answer long term. He's the third string quarterback. He's been inactive a lot all year. And I don't know if they just didn't want the Giants to make the playoffs, but it almost seemed that way, that they'd rather have Washington make it over the Giants, or they were just tanking for a better draft pick. I don't know. But it was really strange. And they mentioned on the telecast, and a lot of analysts on Twitter like Dan Orlovsky said, this kind of took the competition out of football tonight, and it was flat out embarrassing. And it was. I didn't understand it. And to me, if this was Doug Peterson's decision, I would evaluate it as a GM and owner as, what the hell are you doing? Like, you're playing a division opponent. Why help the Washington? Like, you should hate them just as much as you hate the Giants. They're in your division. They're making the playoffs over you. Why are you doing them a favor? And anyway, the Eagles threw the game away. I think they could have won it because Jalen Hurts, Alex Smith came back and he gave it his all. I'm going to give him I love him, coming back in his story. But they're going to be playing Tampa Bay next week. That's Saturday night, the 9:15 game on NBC. I'm worried about Alex Smith. I'm really worried. He can't move anymore, just with his leg and everything. And Tampa Bay Bucks have some really, really good pass rushers, and Shaq Barrett, JPP, Ndamukong Suh, they can get to him, and he could really be hurt in this game. And I'm just worried about his health long term. I don't think Washington has a chance in hell of winning the game. I'm just more worried about how he will hold up playing against this type of competition where their only goal is to hit him as hard as they can. So I'm praying for Alex Smith that he can come out of that game healthy. Like I said, I don't think they'll have a chance in hell of winning it. But Washington wins the division at 7-9. Alex Smith going to be comeback player of the year. Ron Rivera survived the year after having cancer. They're an inspiring team, and it's good to see two guys who deserve it make the playoffs. So credit to them. And they're in the playoffs, and they'll be hosting Tampa Bay Saturday. Also, NFC started off. Tampa Bay knew they were going to be the 5th seed before the day started. They were locked in there. But after that, coming into the game, the 6th seed were the Rams, followed by the Bears, 7th seed, 8th seed, Arizona. 7 teams make it. The Rams had a couple different options. If they beat Arizona, they're in the playoffs. If they lose to Arizona and the Bears lose, they're still in the playoffs. But really, best case scenario, win the game and you're in. So I'll start off Rams, Arizona, division game to end the season. First quarter, Kyler Murray rolls his ankle. His ankle has been bothering him all week. He was a game time decision if he was going to play, but he was hurt early, really couldn't move on it, and he threw a lot in the second and third quarters, but he didn't play until later in the fourth. So former Winnipeg Blue Bomber Chris Streveler was thrown into action, had limited success for Arizona. He actually threw an 82-yard pick six to Troy Hill, which was a killer at the end of the second quarter, but they really didn't generate anything. Also, John Welford started for the Rams. Jared Goff has a broken thumb. He's out. So John Welford made his first career NFL start, had never taken a snap. And, he had a mixed bag game. He threw an interception early in the first quarter, but he kind of settled in after that. He didn't turn the ball over again, which is the most important thing you can do as a young quarterback with limited experience. Protect the football. He was also a run-pass option. He ran for over 50 yards. He scrambled a lot. And he was efficient enough to give the Rams a chance. And their defense was fantastic. Aaron Donald just blowing up people. Just the way that the Rams defense can play. Jalen Ramsey and DeAndre Hopkins was a matchup to watch all day. And Jalen Ramsey's just proving why, if he's not the top corner, he's right up there with Xavier Howard and, the likes of those two. They're both fantastic talents. But Kyler Murray came back in the fourth quarter. Wasn't the same because he really couldn't move. So he was throwing a lot off his back foot. And the Rams only scored 18 points, but they only allowed 7. They win. They clinched the 6th seed. John Welford wins his first career NFL start. And it looks, Jared Goff likely will be able to play this weekend. It's not a guarantee, but a good chance. Cooper Kupp was on the reserve COVID list. He should be eligible to come off this week. And their left tackle, really one of the more important players on the team, Andrew Whitworth, the veteran, has been out for a couple weeks. He should be due back to play. So they're going to have reinforcements. They're going to be playing the third seed Seattle Seahawks, who beat San Francisco yesterday. It's going to be another division game in Seattle. No 12th man. Obviously, no, excuse me, with no fans, it completely shifts. Seattle is one of the toughest buildings to play in the NFL. And it's going to be interesting to see. I think the Rams have a much better chance because there's no home crowd. And also, Seattle's offense has just not been good all year. Really, since the midway point or a little before, Russell Wilson hasn't been great. Their defense has really stepped up for them. So that gives them a chance. But that's a pick on there. Division game in Seattle. Who knows who will come out of that one? Both teams really inconsistent. So one team's got to win, but I'll talk about that later in the week. Then there's Green Bay, Chicago. So this game starts off important for the Bears. It became irrelevant when Arizona lost. Arizona had to win to make the playoffs. So the Bears, during this game, the games were happening simultaneously. So Chicago didn't know, but with the Arizona loss, the Bears secured a playoff spot. But they played very well. Had a couple of long drives. First half, Aaron Rodgers was throwing 3 touchdown passes to 3 different receivers, and Robert Tonyan, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and Dominique Daphne. And they had a 21-13 lead at the half. But they had two long drives, one 6-minute drive, ending in a field goal, which made it 21-16, and another almost 8-minute drive that led into the fourth quarter, which became a turnover on downs. And this is when Green Bay's offense found themselves again. Aaron Jones ran one in, and then Devontae Adams caught his 18th touchdown of the season with about 3 minutes left. It was his, like I said, his 18th, which tied Sterling Sharp for the record for most by a Green Bay receiver in a single season. And with the win, Green Bay clinched the number 1 seed, so they'll have a bye next week. Like Kansas City, they'll be idle, and the NFC will go through Green Bay. So the frozen tundra, not an easy place to play when it's January and cold. So that bodes well for Aaron Rodgers and co. He's never had home field throughout his years as a starter. When he won the Super Bowl in 2010, he was a wildcard team. He had to win 3 straight road games and won the Super Bowl, obviously, on a neutral site. But interesting to see what will happen there. Obviously, the Bears lose, but with Arizona losing, the Bears still make the playoffs. And they played Green Bay hard, and I think it's a positive thing for them. They didn't win. Obviously, they lost 35-16, but the game was closer than that. So kudos to them for playing a tough team. And they're going to play New Orleans next weekend. It'll be a Sunday game at 5:30. So they'll be at New Orleans. Again, New Orleans with limited crowd. They're another team that's really hard to play against when there's fans and it's loud. So we'll see what happens with New Orleans. They won yesterday against Carolina, but with the Sunday game, Alvin Kamara tested positive for COVID, so he'll be eligible to return. If the game was on Saturday, because of how many days you have to be on the list, he would be ineligible. But the Sunday game, Sunday afternoon, Alvin Kamara should be back for New Orleans. They should get Michael Thomas back, who's been out the last 3 weeks. Latavius Murray, who couldn't play yesterday. So they'll be back to full throttle, but you never know with the pesky Bears. Mitchell Trubisky behind center and their defense. If it can keep them close, who knows how that plays out. So that could be another close game. So yeah, it was a great day of football. A lot of tight games every game. Like I said, a lot of the games had a lot of meaning. And just to run through it, we got Kansas City idle. I'll go through it again. Saturday, the day starts off 2:00 game, Indianapolis at Buffalo. That game's on CBS. 5:30 game on Fox, Rams at Seattle. And then the day finishes 9:15, Tampa Bay at Washington football team. Then Sunday, another 3-pack of games. Starts off with who starts it? Oh, Tennessee, Baltimore. Sorry, on ESPN. So Baltimore at Tennessee at 2:00, 5:30. We got the NFC game between the Bears and New Orleans. And the day finishes off Sunday Night Football, NBC. Sorry, between Steelers and Browns. So we should see some good football upcoming. Some tight games, I'm sure. And the NFC is really the tougher division, the tougher conference for me to predict. I don't see there's not a lot of great teams there. My dark horse Super Bowl really is Tampa Bay. I think they're clicking at the right time here. They're playing good football. So if I had to pick one that I have the most confidence in, as a wildcard team, it would definitely be Tampa Bay. I think Brady's playing good football. He's starting to click with Antonio Brown, Gronk. Mike Evans was hurt yesterday, but hopefully he'll be good to go. Chris Godwin's been playing well. And they just seem to have found that gel here later in the season when it's important to. And for my kind of sleeper Super Bowl pick in the AFC is for wildcard teams, I have to say Baltimore, just the way they're playing right now. Like I said, I like teams that come into the playoffs hot, and they've definitely been one of those teams. If they can game against Tennessee, they need to keep the score at least tight or get a lead so that they can run the football the whole day. If they're a team that's behind, they won't win because Lamar can't throw them out of it. I mean, he threw 11 passes yesterday. He only had to throw 11, but if you get behind, then you're in trouble because then he has to throw a ton. You leave your run game, you leave what's gotten you to the dance, and it can lead to bad things for Baltimore. But later in the week, I'll be talking more and more about these matchups. I believe Thursday I'll be doing a show with Ben Murray, who I talked to a few weeks ago. We'll be previewing the games for the weekend. Also, I plan on doing, me and Seamus will be doing our show tomorrow night. We'll be starting our coverage of Your Honor, which is a show on HBO, but you can stream it on Crave. So watch that and keep up with me and Seamus and tell us what you think of the episode, what you think of the show. Obviously, starting Bryan Cranston. Wednesday, I will do a show Wednesday night about the World Juniors. Obviously, the gold medal game and bronze medal game will be Tuesday, but I'll be doing one Wednesday night after work, talking about the winner of the tournament as a whole, and just moving forward toward the NHL season. And then this weekend, I'm going to be starting coverage of the NHL, talking about each division, breaking down the teams in it, where I see them finishing, things of that nature. So I also kind of want to do a show about Zdeno Chara and departure there in the future of the Boston Bruins. So that might be upcoming too. So a lot of things happening here to the point. Keep your eyes open. Watch out, keep your Apple Podcast, subscribe so that every time I drop a new episode, it automatically downloads on your phone. Then you can just click it and listen on the go whenever you have free time. But a lot of fun sports. Obviously, football turning into the playoffs, so only a few weeks left of football coverage, which is always sad for me. But I'll be diving more into the NHL and into the NBA. Also, Major League Baseball, the offseason has been as slow as a turtle, but we'll see what happens here with the likes of the Toronto Blue Jays and the New York Yankees with DJ LeMahieu. So a lot of coverage coming. I love the support. Just let me know what you think of the podcast in the comments, things of that nature. But I'll be back with Seamus tomorrow. But until then, have a great day, and we'll talk soon.